How I get your location and how it's a story about permission. How did I come with this idea? So I was working on a ski resort app, doing this beautiful app, but we lack one key feature, a really lovable feature for our user, which is a tracking feature. So when they are on the different resorts, they can look at their journey around the resorts and have some beautiful badges and stuff. But in order to do this feature, we require to access the location of our user. And I thought, okay, that's great. That must be really easy. I just have to access the location whenever I want and this will be done. But I forgot something my mom told me a long time ago, is that if you need something from someone, don't be a thief. Just ask for their permission in order to get it. And this works for most things in life, but especially for location of our users. By the way, I didn't present myself. I'm Thomas, lead developer at Theodo Apps, which was previously known as BAM. And for this talk, you will need some prerequisites to know is that for this project, I use two different libraries, which are permission handler and the location library. Permission handler is used to actually access the different permissions of our users, especially the location one. And location is to access the location service of our users. So let's get started with what are the different permission statuses we can access. Basically, we have two different types of permission, the foreground permission and the background permission. Foreground permission has three different states. The one which on when our users tell us that I will never give you the permission to access my location, which is fine, but which we don't want actually. Another state which is only this time, so only the time you requested it and when the application is active. So when the app will be killed, you will need to reset the permission. And when in use, so when you ask it the first time, you will not have to ask it again. So this kind of permission, the foreground permission, allows you to access when the app is in use or when it's backgrounded, but not killed. And the background permission allows you to access the location of your users, even if your app is killed. How does it translate into the library we use? So for foreground permission, we can use the method permission.location when in use, and for the background permission, permission.location always. But you can also use permission.location, but we decided to split the responsibilities of this because sometimes we'll not need background permission, which is a strong permission, and most of the time we will not need it. So let's get started with permission for foreground location access. At first I was a little delusional maybe, but I thought, okay, this will be simple. You only have three different cases. Your perfect user has already granted you the permission. He has going to his settings and said, okay, I want you to know my location whenever you want, which is perfect. Otherwise, he's like, no, I don't want to give my permission to any apps on my phone, and I have denied it forever and ever. And otherwise, I just, anything, I don't really care. You can ask me your permission, and fine. But I've come to one first problem, is that actually you cannot ask for the permission over and over again with the native models. So you need to be sure that it's the first time we ask, because I think on Android, you can request 2 times and on iOS only 1 time, but we don't want to differentiate between the different OSs. So we need to make sure that this is the first time we ask. And how can we be sure about this? The decision we took is to actually do an onboarding screen. So we will know that it's the only one time we will request it with native access. Great, now we are set. Not really. Another problem we encountered is that specifically on iOS, if the user doesn't have his location service on, then you cannot request for his foreground permission access. And that's a bummer, because you want to give the best user experience to your user, sorry. And if you are not in the different requirements to ask for the permission, then maybe you will not ever see your feature, which is really beautiful, by the way. So we decided that instead of just saying, okay, we cannot request the permission of our user anymore, we can ask them whenever we want to redirect them to their settings if they want. So they can set themselves the permission into their settings. So what does it look like in the code? We basically just have one method for to ask for foreground location, which will wait for the location service to be activated. And then we will look at the current status with location when in use status. Depending on the different case, if it's already granted, we will not ask for another request. And we can throw a specific exception if we want, in the cases we don't want to actually request the permission, or just call the permission location when use request. How does the location for location service work? We just have to look if the service is enabled. And then if it's not, we can request. If the service is not enabled, we can actually throw a specific exception if we want. Here is just generic to redirect however we want. And that's it for the foreground permission. So not so bothersome. But let's get into the more difficult stuff, which are the background location access. And again, I was a little bit delusional. I know it's been a lot of times that I've been delusional, but I saw that when I got the permission to request for foreground access and I have the permission to look at the location foreground, it will be just a logical next step to actually get the background access. But I've really been dreaming in a dream world, yeah, because it's a little bit more complicated than that. When you get the granted permission, you need to know if it's while in use or only this time. Because if the user only grants you the permission only this time, on iOS, you cannot request for the background permission. If you remember well, this is a problem because foreground permission have this different status. And if you look at the code I wrote before, the code in the library doesn't give you the same status. You only have granted, denied, denied forever, and some other status that we don't really care. And when your user gives you when in use or only this time permission access, in the library we will only be notified that it gives us the location permission granted, and you cannot make any difference between those two permissions. Okay, but we have another problem. The other problem is, if you look at this method, it looks pretty fine because it's basically the same as when you ask for location when in use. But the problem is that here, it's a feature that you cannot await because of some iOS problem where when the location always modal is popped, the status is notified natively only if the user decided to change the status. So you could, if the user doesn't change the status, you can await something forever, which you don't want. So the library decided to not wait for the modal to be actually popped. But we don't want this either. So it was really worrisome. And so it's time to do some hacking, a little bit of hacking time, and to be some thought thinking. And the first thing to resolve is the second problem, which is when you want to request the location always. And I thought of a little hack that you could use the app lifecycle state. So the app lifecycle state will tell you in which state your application is, and we will need specifically two of them. The one which is when the app lifecycle state gets to be inactive, and the one which is when it's resumed. Why is that? Because when the modal will be natively popped, your app lifecycle state will be changed to inactive. And then when you will come back to the screen, which is the Flutter screen, you will be resumed. So how can we actually do this in code? We decided to create a little wrapper around our different widgets, which is called the app state watcher, which will access the old app state of our app and then provide a callback to handle with the new app state and see the differences between these app states. We will do it with location by wrapping our widgets, by your preferential widget, if you want to call it that way, and to look if your old app state was inactive and your new app state is resumed, then you can update your actually permission status for location always. In our project, we use Riverpod, so it was a state notifier, but you can do whichever you want to watch your location status. So that's done for the first problem. That's cool. Another problem, and the second problem, if you recall well, is that the permissions are different in the OS than the library just give you. And I thought a long time, like, can I really make it so I can differentiate both of them? And the answer I found is like, no, I can't. So I need to find a loophole. And this small loophole was that I retraced like what my user is doing and what I'm expecting him to do when requesting for his permission. So basically, when I'm requesting for his permission, I just have to know, does the user has pressed the button? If he has pressed the button, then I expect the model to be popped. And so if it is popped, we saw that just before, we can now, with the app lifecycle state, know if it has actually been popped or not. And in other cases, then we just can redirect to settings, because it's probably that it was in the settings of location when in use and not location always. Sorry, not location always. Permission status that when in use, and the status when is only this time. And so to do this, in order to do this, we just wrapped our widget, made a stateful widget with two different booleans, that if the module has been shown and if the user has pressed our button. If and then in our app state watcher, we just updated it to set state our native model has been shown to true if the state has been turned to inactive. And then we just have in our builder, in our button, to set state the we have pressed the button to true if we actually have pressed the button. And the little trick here is we need to wait for the model to be popped, because sometimes on the different devices, the model will not be popped instantly. So you can actually set your button press to true, and your native model will not have been shown, but you want to wait to see if the model actually has been shown before doing any callbacks. And so this way, after waiting some small delay, you can redirect your user to settings if the model have not been popped and the authorization button have been pressed. And so this way, you can actually really give a flow of permission access to your users fully, and I give them like the best experience without any buttons that have been pressed, without any feedbacks. And that's it. Thank you for your attention.